Okay, Unit 6, Day 2. We're going to talk about stretching horizontally and vertically. And we're also going to, sketch shifts. And we're going to sketch stretches of these new graphs. So, looking at these four graphs, this one, A, goes up and down 2, whereas the others only go up and down 1, if you look carefully at the scales. B, this one goes down first, whereas the others go up first. C, this one finishes a pattern by the time it gets to pi, whereas the other ones take 2 pi. And then D, this one has a midline at y equals 2, whereas all the others have a midline at the x-axis, y equals 0. So in A, since it goes up and down 2, there seems to be a vertical stretch, and that's what this equation does. We have this 2 on the outside, a vertical shift. B, down then up. Well, if I shift the graph to the left or to the right, see here, this starts here, goes up and down. If I shift it to the right, then it'll go down and then up. So that seems like it's going to be B, shift to the right. C finishes one pattern by pi, so it gets shrunk in the x direction. And so we learn that if it's a 2 on the x, it divides it by 2, whereas the other ones go to 2 pi. If I divide 2 pi by 2, I get 1 pi. And then for D, the midline is at y equals 2. That means the graph moved up 2, and that seems to be what this plus 2 does in all of our graphs that we've seen up until now. If you remember in the last unit where we did some graphing and we had to memorize some of the basic parent functions, well, cosine and sine are also going to be parent functions. So here is the parent function for cosine, and here is the parent function for sine. The y-intercept of cosine is 1, and the y-intercept of sine is 0. What they want you to do is know where to start. Cosine is going to start at 1, sine is going to start at 0, because the shape is very similar. It goes up and down and up and down. And then once we have these parent functions, if we add to the end or subtract, we're going to shift the graph that much. And so if I take cosine, we have this graph here. So at 0 and at 2 pi it ends, but cosine starts high, goes down, and goes back up. And these are the 5 key points for cosine that we need to know. And then if we're going to move it up 2, if we look at the scale, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and so this point goes up 2, but the key is the middle that used to be at y equals 0 also goes up 2. The middle goes up 2. And so we have our new points. And my silly comment is, once you've seen one period, you've seen them all. Because, haha, they repeat, and they repeat, and they repeat. So So the maximum of cosine used to be 1, but if I add 2, now the maximum is 3. The minimum used to be at -1, but if I add 2, now it's at 1. Which is right here. The minimum is above the x-axis, which is here. The domain left and right goes on forever. The new graph, the bottom is at 1, and the top is at 3. Same thing here. We have a sine curve that I'll just quickly plot out. It starts at the origin. We have to know sine by heart. It's one of the parent functions. And then this one's going to go down 1. So from here, it's going to go down to -1. And so now the new graph is here. There's one period. There is another period, because once you've seen one period, you've seen them all. If I want to keep going back the other way, there's another period. This time the minimum is at -2, and the maximum is at 0, because up here is where the original x-axis was. Domain goes forever left and right, and they just need to have us find the key points. That's 5 points per period. So remember, if there's a number inside the function next to the x, then we do the opposite. So if I'm going to multiply by b, I'm actually going to divide by b. We're going to shrink the graph. So the period normally is 2 pi. Since b is being multiplied, but it's next to the x, we're going to shrink the period by b. And so in this case, we're going to take 2 pi and divide it by 3. So remember, cosine starts on top, and we have to finish everything by 2 pi over 3. Well, here's 2 pi over 3, so cosine has to go down and back up and finish where it started, and then do it again. So 2 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3. If you can count, you can do these. -2 pi over 3. And here's our 5 points for the first period. And then counting this again, 3, 4, 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And so if this is 2 pi over 3, halfway is pi over 3, and half of pi over 3, half of pi over 3 is just pi over 6. Very easy. Just multiply by a half to cut something in half. So here you go. The period is going to be 2 pi divided by b. And the b is going to be the number next to the x inside the function. So we could say something like this, but let me be more specific. We could say we start the cosine graph at 0, and we're going to end it at 2 pi over 3. Well, to get 5 points, we have to divide this in half. So that's 2 pi over 3. Half of it is 1 pi over 3. And we just saw, if I take a pi over 3 and cut that in half, I get pi over 6. And then 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6 reduces to pi over 3. And then 3 pi over 6, lo and behold, reduces to pi over 2. And so each mark is going to be a pi over 6. Let's do the same thing with this example. This time b, or the number we're multiplying the x by, is 5, but it's inside the function next to the x, so we divide by 5. So there's our new period. So then we're going to start at 0, this time for sine, but it's the same thing. Start at 0, end at 2 pi over 5. Well, half of that is 1 pi over 5, and half of pi over 5 is pi over 10. And so 1 pi over 10, 2 pi over 10, sure enough, reduces to pi over 3, and then 3 pi over 10, and then 4 pi over 10 reduces to 2 pi over 5. And so here are those numbers. It's a sine curve, so we start at the midline, we end at the midline, we hit the middle at the midline, the first quarter point we go up, middle, third quarter point, middle. And then once you've seen one period, you've seen them all. And this graph goes on forever. Don't forget to put arrows at the end. The amplitude, we go up 1 and down 1. I decided to use 2 boxes for 1 to make it look better. If you want to use 1 box for 1, that's fine too. Just make sure you label it.